Now, Russia's Supreme Court has rejected an appeal by a Kremlin critic against a 25-year prison term. Vladimir Kara-Murza was convicted on treason and other charges that critics say were politically motivated. After the death of Alexei Navalny, Kara-Murza has become Russia's most significant opposition figure.
Voicing opposition from his prison cell in Russia as he appeals his lengthy prison sentence. Vladimir Kara-Murza has been an outspoken critic of Putin's Russia and the war in Ukraine. It is a stance that has cost him dearly. He has suffered 2 suspected poisonings, as well as time in jail. He's currently serving a 25-year prison sentence on treason charges, including disseminating false information about the Russian army, after he made a speech in the US saying that Russia had committed war crimes in Ukraine. It is the longest known sentence of all of Putin's jailed critics, longer even than the punishment for rape or murder. Amnesty International has designated him a prisoner of conscience. He has compared his case to a Stalinist show trial. Kara-Murza appealed the sentence, but it's taken until now to get a hearing. The Russia Supreme Court had postponed the appeal, insisting that he be physically present at the hearing, despite his state of health, which his lawyer has called worrying. Concerns about his health are very real, since Alexei Navalny's sudden death in an Arctic prison earlier this year, which his supporters pinned on the Kremlin.
For more on this, I'm now joined in our studio by DW's Russia analyst, Konstantin Eggert. Konstantin, Kara-Murza is sentenced to 25 years in prison. Why do you think this was such a severe sentence, and is there now any chance that we could see him get out?
Well, Vladimir, whom I have the honor of knowing personally for quite a few years, is a very, very distinct figure among the Russian opposition. He was probably the only one, I would say, who really managed to master the language of conversation with Western political elites. And that's why he was so successful in convincing, let us say, many people in Congress to support sanctions against the regime of Vladimir Putin. He was one of the most effective critics of Putin in the West. And I think that in a certain way, this severe, completely really Stalinist sentence is a perverse recognition of what he managed to do and what kind of trouble he inflicted on the Kremlin.
You think it's a signal that Putin is sending to other political dissidents?
Oh, well, I mean, let's not speak about Putin's signals. I mean, he can do whatever he pleases. For example, when we speak about the Supreme Court upholding the sentence, let's clarify the terminology. There is no Supreme Court in Russia, like there is no parliament, which doesn't debate anything, or no prosecution, which only prosecutes Putin's enemies. It was predestined. It was easily to predict what they're going to say. I think that this is very much also a statement that you should not be, you should take the signals from the Kremlin very seriously, because Vladimir was poisoned twice. Not at least once, it was clear that it was a relatively mild poisoning. So they were telling him, you have 2 citizenships. He was also a British subject. Go. Leave us alone. The fact that he stayed in Russia really seemingly irritated the Kremlin, because someone who actually very publicly works in the West against the Kremlin is living in Moscow. And I think that that is why, in the end, the punishment was so severe.
Now, his lawyer and his wife are concerned that he could face a similar fate to that of Alexei Navalny, who died under dubious circumstances in prison. What do we know about the conditions that he is being held in currently?
Look, I do not want to go into these details of conditions in Russian prison, because there's one thing for sure. In any prison in Russia, be it in Moscow, be it beyond the Arctic Circle, they can make your life hell if they are ordered to do so. Navalny spent, I think, 40, 50 days in the so-called punishment cell, which is like an inverted coffin, more or less, in terms of size, slightly bigger. And this punishment ranges from psychological torture. For example, when they were taking away the Bible from Navalny, by the way, Vladimir is also a Christian believer. It seems a minor thing, but it denigrates you. It's your right to have books in the cell. So they can go as far, alas, they can go as far as they wish. And this is very dangerous.
Well, thank you so much for that. That is DW's Konstantin Eggert here in the studio with me. We appreciate that analysis.